Hey y'all, my name is Sarah and I love talking about movies. Do have vlogs where I just show you kind of my day-to-day life, so if you're interested, I'll make sure to include some links for those as well. And today we're going to talk about Lisa Frankenstein. I am a big fan of Diablo Cody. She was the writer on this project and she has done some of my favorite films like Juno and Jennifer's Body. So I am aware of her sense of humor. I kind of had an idea of the kind of jokes and the level of dark comedy that we'll be operating on. Also, this is not a family-friendly film. I know how the trailer looks and it's brightly colored and it's like the 80s. This is not for children, not at all. So the movie begins with an animated short film in a way. It starts out with a young man who's going through his days. It looks like a turn of the century, getting up, going to work, playing the piano, where he meets a woman, falls in love, they're spending time together. All of this is silent, by the way, and in black and white. And then they break up, she falls in love with someone else, and he's heartbroken, just sort of wandering through the city, and then he dies. It shows his gravestone and where he's buried, and then the scene sort of shifts and we're in modern day in the same location, and Lisa, our main protagonist, is there and she's doing like a rubbing on the gravestone and sort of puts her name at the top and then pulls it off, and then that is kind of the title sequence. In the next scene, you're in a teenage girl's bathroom. You know, it's got that vintage tile, so it's very colorful, bunch of random things, makeup and hair stuff. This is the first time we're meeting Lisa, our main character, and you can see that she's getting ready to go out. She's doing her hair and her makeup and all this stuff, and then somebody else comes into frame, Taffy. And you can see that it's actually Taffy that's encouraging Lisa to go out. She's sort of non-committal, she kind of mumbles, you know. She doesn't seem very excited to go, and she seems like kind of nervous. So Taffy is encouraging her and offering to let Lisa use her tanning bed, which she won in a beauty pageant. So she decides to go in and use it, and she gets electrocuted just a little bit. So it turns out tanning bed is broken. So they decide to go to this party. It's a house party, a teenage house party. Lisa is there being her sort of awkward self. Her and Taffy talk to a few people together, and then Lisa wanders off. Unbeknownst to her, she's actually drank something laced with LSD. So she starts tripping and she's wandering through the house, and another student offers to help her and then tries to take advantage of her, I'll say. It's the 1980s, so we'll say tries to take advantage of her. Touched her boob, and as the LSD, I guess, starts to kick in even harder, sends her kind of spiraling. One minute she's running away, moving through the house. The next thing you know, she's outside looking at the sky, and again moving into scenes and hearing music. And there's all of these flashing scenes where there's like a statue that's looking at her, and she's dressed in this turn of the century gown and her hair is all done. And throughout these scenes you're hearing this music go on, and then next thing you know, she's somehow gotten herself home and is in the bathroom. She breaks the mirror and then she goes stumbling off. Next thing you know, it's morning, and Taffy is there trying to wake her up because they have to get ready for school. They come downstairs, and this is where you meet her family unit, which is her father and her stepmother, Janet. Janet is very upset. Lisa's broken the bathroom window, and she really wants to, make this a teachable moment for her. So she is kind of pushing Lisa's father into kind of bringing the hammer down. Lisa goes to work, where she meets two other students again, one of whom she has a crush on, Michael. So then she comes home. She's on her way in as Janet, her father, and Taffy are on their way out. They're going to the movies. Lisa ends up staying home by herself when a man breaks into her house. So she freaks out. She's running around, screaming, and this guy is chasing her, and they end up getting outside of the house, running through some sprinklers, into the house again. And she realizes that this person that broke into her house is dead, that somehow he's alive and that he is in her house. So she decides to help him and get him cleaned up and hide him in her closet. Later, she finds out that he heard her when she was tripping and she ran into the graveyard right before this big storm, which happened the exact same night. She was sort of crying and really upset. And she said that she wished that she could be with that person. And I guess he heard her because when he reanimated, he went to find her. So she decides to help him, get him cleaned up and change out his clothes for something that's a bit more modern. And she talks to him. She shares her feelings with him. That sort of has an effect on her and her personality. And he is encouraging her to dress a little differently. And that seems to give her more confidence in the next coming days. The unnamed man who sort of wanders around the house when Lisa and Taffy are at school and her father is at work. He just sort of wanders around looking at things, exploring things, and he's messing with Janet. He put a bug in her food, which she found out, freaked her out, and she decided that Lisa was responsible and went to confront Lisa about it. He comes out, knocks Janet out, we assume kills her, and then cuts off her ear. So Lisa and the monster get rid of Janet's body. They keep her ear. Lisa, who works part-time as a seamstress tailor, decides to sew it on to see if that would work, if he could hear with the ear sewn on. That didn't work. So then he let her know that the only thing that would be able to reanimate him more is lightning. And then Lisa got the idea for them to use the broken tanning bed, which had electrocuted her before. So she puts him in the tanning bed and it works. The ear that she sewed on is reanimated and he can hear. So you can imagine where the story goes from there. Lisa and him working together, remove some body parts from some people, sew them on, reanimate him back to a point where he nearly looks alive. They sort of go on like a killing spree, but at the same time, they sort of get closer and share more details about their personal lives with each other. In the end, Lisa decides that she wants to be with the monster, that it's him that she's in love with and he's in love with her. And in order for them to be together, she has to basically die so that they can be together. That there's no way that they'll be together if she's in jail or even if she's like sent to the electric chair like she thinks. So she decides to commit suicide by using the tanning bed, turning it all the way up. The shed goes up in flames. Everybody from the neighborhood is there. In the next scene, her father, Lisa's father, and Taffy are at her grave, saying goodbye. They leave some flowers for her. And in the very last scene, we see the monster who looks fully alive, quite tan, but fully alive. And Lisa are sitting together in a bench at the park that's right outside of the cemetery, and he's reading poetry to her. We get closer and closer to seeing them. You can see she's bandaged pretty heavily with her eyes closed, sort of listening to him. And as he says the last line, that's how the movie ends. I did buy it and add it to my physical and digital collection. So I skipped over a lot because there are just so many little mini events that make the story so funny and so messed up and so weird. When I was watching it, it reminded me of all these movies from like the 80s and 90s, like So I Married an Axe Murderer, I Was a Teenage Zombie, I Was a Teenage Witch, like all of these slapstick, goofball comedy, but slightly dark, or that involve the supernatural elements into the stories. To me, it was like definitely more comedy than horror, but then something would happen that is like genuinely horrible and horrific. Like that ending scene, it felt authentic and it felt appropriate because she set herself on fire, electrocuted and then on fire. So it makes sense, but it's also such a disturbing note to end the film on. It was stuff like that throughout the whole movie. So it has these classic teen story elements like the transformation, the montage scene with all the different outfits when she was dressing the monster, the colors of everything. Like Janet's house, which it's Janet's house, every single thing in that house is very clearly Janet. The color of the carpets, the furniture, the decor, the lack of decor. It's almost like minimal, but very 80s. Super clean. There's a place for every single thing. The front yard, their lawn is like perfectly mowed. They have a piano. I mean, it's the 80s. It's like, why not have a piano that nobody plays apparently? But of course they do, you know? It's like all these little details and notes throughout the whole film that make it so interesting to watch and make the characters feel more real. Like seeing Janet clean the house in like a spandex outfit, fully with the spandex leggings and something that kind of looks like a bathing suit, but it's not a bathing suit. That's just what they used to exercise in back in the day. She's listening to her, I don't know, personal development, motivational stuff. Of course she is, because she's Janet. She's an IP, an intuitive person. Of course she listens to that stuff while she's cleaning the house. So I adore Janet. Janet is my favorite character. Janet felt like an absolute solid rock of a character that everybody moved around. Her presence or lack of presence was still felt throughout the whole film. Lisa and Taffy were very much like teenage girls. We got one over here who's morbid, and then Taffy who seems extroverted by comparison, but they both feel like real, like their interests, which are very separate, the way they see the world, the way they interact with people, again, which is very different, but each is sort of overwhelming in different ways. And I love that. Let's just go there. It was stuff that didn't make sense and would only make sense to like a teenager. Like killing Janet and then taking her ear, and then killing that other boy and taking his hand. You kill a whole person just for that one body part, but that lack of foresight is like teen brain. You know what I'm saying? It felt like to their world. But I loved it. It was so messed up and very dark. I love the music. I love that there was the musical element was strong, but not so overpowering that it sort of took you out of the story. I loved all the creative scenes, like when Lisa was tripping on that stuff, which it seemed like once Lisa took the LSD and her mind separated from reality and just showed her like all of these scenes and things that didn't make sense and noises and music and stuff, that it never quite went back to where it was. I mean, she was already separated socially and emotionally because of the terrible, like horrific way that her mother was murdered, you know, that it seemed like all it took was this extra event to like totally push her over the edge. So even though they were things that were not logical, didn't make sense, it felt very Lisa, if that makes sense. I had to get it. I thought it was just such a weird, funny, quirky, not scary, but disturbing story. And I would give Lisa Frankenstein, I would give a 3 out of 5, and I would really, really recommend it. Lisa Frankenstein has like equal measures, like creative details, the sound and music, the characters, and the story, that it's a solid film. So I highly recommend it, but you guys let me know what you think. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.